Morning, Blair. Who did I forget? What schools? But I'm talking about schools. You've been in 8th grade a long time. I do want to thank all the schools. Look back there, guys. Look at all the students that are here and behind you. We're just thrilled to have you. Tony told me before we had our planning meeting, he said, now look, I don't want you to say anything about any of us. And so I'm going to disregard everything he said. There are several that I have to say thank you to, and then I have a few brief remarks, and we'll move on with our ceremony. This all started in a conversation with my good longtime friend David Zachary over a year ago. I said, David, I've run on something here that might interest us. And David heard it, and he said, you're right, Phil. And he gave me some guidance. And along the way, I want to thank our American Legion Post 121. Guys, lift up your hand, American Legion Post 121. This presentation to them last Veterans Day, and they said, let's do it. And they stepped up and said, we're going to pledge $1,000 to this project. And if you haven't turned it in, guys, we're going to collect right over here in just a little bit. I want to thank Willis Granite Products for their work, not just on the mine, but the whole remodeling of our Veterans Park. Brenda and Linda jumped right in and just said, we want to be a part of this, and I really appreciate them. I want to thank the Old Bear County Museum. Stephen Dock has been a big help in finding. You come by and take a look at some old uniforms and helmets that's in our museum from men that served in the 36th Infantry Division 100 years ago, right from our home county. And then I've got to say, yeah, thank you, Stephen. And I must say a word of thanks to the city of Granite. They have gone all out on this, and they're going to feed you dinner. Except for the students. Y'all got to go home and eat cafeteria food. I'm sorry. The rest of us, Lord willing. Well, here's what the mayor said. There's enough for 500. Every man and woman for themselves after we say amen in a minute. We'll be under the tent down the road. Also, let me say a word to one of our own from Granite, Master Sergeant Van Alsto. Where is he at? Jody, where are you at? Will he even appear?
He's back there.
He's behind the scenes on this whole project. Jody, where's Jody? Jody, see, literally, he's beside the seats. Master Sergeant Jody Van Elsen from Granite, Oklahoma National Guard. He has really helped me, as well as many others from the Oklahoma National Guard. Let me tell you a story. I want to tell this story primarily for the students and for the children, the kids that are behind me. I grew up just north of town here on a farm, here in a little community called Lake Creek. Any Lake Creekers out here? There's me and Joe Don Murray. That's all, and Roger. That's all got there. It's a small community. But come over here and help me, one of you boys that know something about these mic stands. Grab phones, figure that out. That's why we hired you. I grew up in the Lake Creek community. Very good, very good. And I was surrounded by a whole host of uncles and aunts and great uncles and great aunts. One of those great uncles was my Uncle Bill Maxfield. He lived, from the time I knew it, up here on Mountain Avenue, right next door on the west side of where old Palmer Briggs's house. Those of you in Granite know where that's at. And Uncle Bill was a great man, and I loved him very much. He was a farmer south of town. But Uncle Bill had a funny way of breathing. Every single breath he took would have a deep wheeze. Every breath. Every breath. One day, Uncle Bill pulled up out there at the farm with Daddy, and we was looking at the crops. You know how the farmers do. They just stopped in the middle of the road and talked about how dry it was. And when are you going to cut that wheat? When are you going to plant that cotton? Here they go. When Uncle Bill drove off, I turned to Daddy and I said, Daddy, why does Uncle Bill breathe like that? And Daddy was thoughtful, and he was quiet for a moment. And he said, well, when Uncle Bill was a young man, there was a great war. And he said on the battlefield, he breathed gas. And he said it scarred his lungs the rest of his life. Well, somehow or other, that stayed in my mind. I don't know why, it just did. I loved Uncle Bill, but that day he became my hero. Well, as we approached this date, Veterans Day is just a few days away, November 11th. This Veterans Day is a unique Veterans Day in that it is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Not World War II, World War I, 100 years ago. In fact, Veterans Day is on November 11th because that's when World War I ended. I've been amazed about how many people don't know that. What did history teachers teach your kids? That we don't realize that that's the end of World War I. So I began to think about Uncle Bill, and I began to do research. You can find anything on the internet. And I unearthed a story that was much, much bigger than Uncle Bill. Here's what I found out. In 1917, America went to war, joined the war effort in France. And they came to places like Granite, Oklahoma. And the recruiters came and said, if you're between the ages of 18 and 29, you're about to take a European vacation. And you've got one of two ways of doing this. One, you can join your Oklahoma National Guard right now, and if you'll do that as an incentive, we will keep you together. We promise you that. Sometimes the Army doesn't always keep its promises, General, but they did. Or they said you can wait and you can be drafted. And those draftees wound up in the 90th Tough Hombre Division. Many Oklahomans. That's another Texas-Oklahoma outfit. Well, what I found was that I used our limiting factor. I could have included Caldwell, Beckham, and Tillman, but I used Old Greer County. Old Greer County is a limiting factor. 184 men joined the Oklahoma National Guard. They were placed in the Texas National Guard in the 36th Infantry Division, newly stood up down in Fort Worth, Texas. So 184 men from our county went off to World War I, and they kept them together. They kept 60 of them from Greer County in the 132nd Machine Gun Battalion, Company C. Company C. So when they went off to the war, they were fighting for the folks back home, but in many ways the folks back home were in their very same squads, their very same platoons, in the Machine Gun Battalion, their own sections. They were boys from the wheat fields, the cotton patches of southwest Oklahoma, panhandle of Texas, all the way down to Fort Worth, Vernon, over to Wichita Falls. They were some tough hombres and boys. What happened was this. They threw them into the front lines on October 8th, 1918. This would be 1 month before the end of the war. And they would fight in a little village called St. Etienne, France. Small little place. Well, St. Etienne is right in the center of the Western Front. And on October 8th, 1918, the boys from Texas and Oklahoma went up and over the top, they called it, and went into the front line in battle. That morning, they suffered 1,300 casualties. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1,300 casualties. 300 killed, many of them from southwest Oklahoma, and 1,000 wounded. Turns out, research has been done just recently on casualty rates in World War I. That's the single highest casualty rate for a single day battle in World War I. So we can argue that the boys from Granite, Mangum, Altus, El Dorado, all these other towns around here were in the biggest fight of the war, the biggest single day fight of the war. And they did something remarkable. The French had been trying to open up that territory for 4 years to no avail. They broke the center of the line, drove the Germans back 15 miles, and the war came to an end. It's a remarkable story. And the boys from our hometowns, this is why we call this event Honoring Our Hometown Heroes, they accomplished this. They did this. And we're here 100 years later, and I'm glad you're here, to remember this story that we have forgotten. I can promise you 100 years ago, if you walked down the main street of Granite, everybody was talking about it. And today, 100 years later, we're talking about it again. They're all long gone. They're buried in those cemeteries all around us. And the next time you sadly have to go to a funeral in one of our cemeteries, just walk out among them. You'll see, I guarantee you, you'll see somebody in the 36th Infantry Division, 132nd Machine Gun Battalion, you'll see their white marker. They're all over our cemeteries round about us. I found out something else that we have completely forgotten in Greer County. There was a soldier from Martha and Mangum. His name was Samuel Sampler. He was a recipient of the Medal of Honor on October 8th, 1918. Did you know that? Greer County has its own Medal of Honor recipient. We're going to read you what's on the monument here in just a few minutes, and Sampler is cited. Something else happened that same day that's quite remarkable. Not only did Sam Sampler receive the Medal of Honor, but another man from the 142nd Infantry Regiment, 36th Infantry Division, received the Medal of Honor from Oklahoma. He was from Seminole. His name was Harold Turner. And we have the Turner family and the Sampler family here with us. And I don't want you to hold up your hands. If you're a Turner family or a Sampler family, hold up your hands. There you are, right over there. God bless you, Terry. few weeks ago, I was invited back to the little village of St. Etienne, France. I was there in June, strangely enough, just to see the battlefield. I happened to be in Europe, and I thought, well, I'll go see this place where Uncle Bill fought. I met the people of the village. It's a town about like Granite. It's a farming village. They grow wheat and cattle, just like we do. It's amazing. And they said, could you come back in October? And I said, well, tell me why. They said, well, we're going to have a ceremony like we're having here tonight, or today, and we'd like for you to be our guest. So I traveled back to St. Etienne, and they had 4 separate ceremonies. They went all over the battlefield all day long. I spoke 3 different times to those folks, telling them Uncle Bill's story and telling them about you. They sent me back a proclamation. It's right over there. Could someone, Kathy, could you hand me that proclamation? They sent a proclamation to the city of Granite. It's right there. Kathy's got it. Thank you, Kathy. Bring that to me if you would, please. Tony and the city of Granite has entered into a sister relationship with the village of St. Etienne. They sent a proclamation to them, and they sent you guys this one. So let me just read it to you. A declaration delivered on November 8th, 2018, the year of our Lord, to Granite, Oklahoma. The town of St. Etienne-et-Arns in the Ardennes area of France expresses its gratitude to the United States that liberated us in 1918. The sacrifice of your allies who came from America regained our freedom in this little corner of France. Freedom, equality, and brotherhood is the essential motto of France, and it is based on these values that we are proud of having you at our side. St. Etienne will never forget the town of Granite, Oklahoma, in Greer County. We will continue to honor your soldiers so that the future generations will have lasting peace. During this year of 2008, the mayor of St. Etienne-et-Arns joins together with you and wishes to thank you with his hand on his heart for the commemoration of the acts of bravery on the part of these men. Let us never forget Mayor Giles Colson, local municipality council of St. Etienne-et-Arns, France. Isn't that a beautiful proclamation? City of Granite will have that. One other thought I just want to share with you. My mother told me, Mama's 90 years old. She said that for years and years and years, there was an old open tabernacle right over here by the boulevard, right there by the Granite Public School sign. The street was blocked off, and they had a big open area tabernacle. And she said we had revival meetings there in the summer. Every church in town would have it for a week. We'd have revival 2 and 3 weeks. And she said, I was converted on that old tabernacle. They did some research on the 36th Infantry Division boys in World War I. They found that they were 90% Protestant boys, Baptist, Methodist, Church of Christ, Presbyterian. I stood on Hill 140 just about a month ago. And I was all up there by myself, standing on that hill on October 8th. And I thought about them charging that hill, taking that hill, being slaughtered all around them. And I thought, you know good and well, those boys were praying and asking for help and asking for guidance. The Lord got many of them through it, but that is sacred ground over there at France. The blood of Oklahoma and Texas boys was spilt upon it. And it's interesting those people at St. Etienne haven't forgot it. I'm a Baptist preacher, so I'm real tempted to do 2 things. Preach a sermon and take an offering, but I'm going to resist both. But let me just say, Granite, it took spiritual fortitude. Navajo, Blair, Mangum, it takes some spiritual guts to fight like that. You got to have it. They say there's no atheist in a foxhole, and I don't think there was even before they went. They were good men. Well, I appreciate you all being here today, and I want to introduce our special guests who are a part of our ceremony today. They're going to participate in a unique ceremony in just a moment. First, I want to introduce to you Major General Patrick Hamilton from Austin, Texas. Is right here in the front row. He'll speak in just a moment. Let's give a hand to the Major General for 36th Infantry Division. We think this is the first time a 2-star general's ever been in Granite. And if you know of one that has been here before, don't tell us anything about it. We also want to recognize, it's easy for me to say, Colonel Ivester from the Oklahoma National Guard. He's our representative from the Oklahoma National Guard today. We appreciate him being here. And a brand new friend I just met has Granite roots. This is Colonel Anthony Fawn right here. Colonel, hold up your hands so everybody can see you living in Granite at this time. we've asked the General to come and make a little presentation and talk to us about Samuel Samper. So Major General, if you'd come and take a little time for us.